guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This video, we're going to continue the 30 for 30 series. And as you can see, the title of this video is The Old Can't Save the New. And this title is basically referring to, again, we're in the Millennium series now. This is what we're talking about. And what I mean by that was, we got a lot of the traditional monsters in the Millennium series as well. We got King Ghidorah, we got Mothra, we even got a little bit of Rodan in Final Wars. But even with all those monsters coming back, and even with their popularity, it doesn't seem to have been able to save the Millennium series. Now, once again, this is completely opinion, my opinion. I know there's a lot of people out there who love the Millennium series, but I think the general consensus is that it is the weaker era of all three eras. And I would have to agree with that. And we look back at the Heisei series, and we saw a lot of monsters come back with much success. A lot of people like Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, Godzilla and Mothra, The Battle for Earth. Some people like that movie. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2 is one of the more popular ones. And these include all monsters that came back from the Showa era. And we got that again in the Millennium series, but it wasn't as successful. Like I said, we did get Ghidorah, we did get Mothra, we did get Kiryu or Mechagodzilla, however you want to refer to him as. And we even got some new additions from the past as well, like Baragon. Obviously, each era contained their one-off monsters. Even Showa era had Megalon, who we had never seen before his movie and never saw him after. And, of course, in the Heisei era, we got Biollante, Destroyer, and then, of course, in the Millennium era, Megaguirus, Orga. And, the Heisei era was, I think, very successful. And in the Millennium era, we got new monsters. We got the old monsters to try and come in here to give a sense of familiarity. Got that right. But it really didn't salvage much. I mean, maybe with the exception of GMK, which is probably, as you saw in my prior video, going in order, GMK is the obvious crown jewel of the Millennium series. And then when you go to the Final Wars, we got a lot of the older monsters too. We even went as far back as Spiga, Kamacuras, was in there, Ebera, which I don't think anyone cares about. At least I know I don't. But still, you got all these old creatures. You even had, Zilla, Gino from the '98 movie in there. A lot of nostalgia, but, nostalgia doesn't always mean success, And while Final Wars is one of my favorite guilty pleasures in the Godzilla series, obviously, it wasn't very well received by many people as well. Despite the fact that Godzilla had a very sleek look, we got to see two different versions of Gigan, but still, it wasn't very popular. And maybe you can argue that at this point, people started to taper off on their Godzilla fever. Maybe '98 did leave such a bad taste in people's mouths that they didn't care for Godzilla anymore. I really can't put my thumb on it. For whatever reason, the Millennium series did not do well. And even with the inclusion of some of the older monsters, the only exception in that series is GMK. It's really the only one that people pretty much can agree with that they love. I would say maybe the second most successful one, even though it's not my favorite, would be Godzilla 2000. I hear that come up a lot amongst fans. Mainly younger fans, though. Guys that maybe you guys are 18 now, 19. But I remember when engaging with some of you guys back in 2014 when we've discussed the Millennium series, both on the channel and on the Nation Facebook page and then other forums. That movie came up a lot. And I remember a lot of the guys that talked about that a couple of years ago were like 15, 14, 16. So I know a lot of you guys now are 18, 19, 20. And that seems to be the popular movie for definitely the younger crowd during that time. But it's unfortunate that even calling back to some of the older monsters wasn't enough to salvage this era. And I don't think that necessarily has to do with the movies in and of themselves. A lot of the movies weren't horrible. They certainly weren't as good as the Heisei movies. But I just think that at that point, the popularity for Godzilla was waning. At least in Japan it was. I think over here, I think it's pretty consistent that fans here are always very enthusiastic and always very optimistic about Godzilla movies. And, I think Japanese people, Japanese fans, they kind of take it for granted unintentionally. And I'll give you an example of how that can work. Like, I grew up in New York. I grew up in the Bronx, New York. And, you know, I was always in the city. I worked a lot in Manhattan, and I've been all around the city, all 5 boroughs. And it always amazed me when I lived in New York, and people would, like, tourists would come, visitors, and they'd be in awe and of New York and this and that. And to me, it was like, whatever, you know, because you take it for granted because you've seen it so much throughout your life. I think the same thing happens with Godzilla in Japan. You know, yes, they're fans. There's a lot of hardcore fans. He's a big, big part of Japan, just like New York City is a big part of the state of New York. So they know that at any time they can see Godzilla. They can shop for a Godzilla toy. They can get Godzilla gear. They can go to a Godzilla movie playing somewhere, or they can pick up the Godzilla movie anywhere they go. It's not so much the case over here. You know, there's no Godzilla store. There's no Godzilla hotel. There's none of that. So we have a greater appreciation because we don't see it all the time. Where they take it for granted, not intentionally. It's very unintentional, but they can see Godzilla at any time in any way they can or any way they want at any time. And when you have that kind of access to something that's as popular, you do take it for granted unintentionally, you know, subconsciously you take it for granted. And I think at this point, maybe that's what was happening in Japan. It just was, people were probably Godzilla'd out, you know? So, you know, I mean, and again, that's an opinion. I don't have any statistical facts behind that. I'm just going based on, you know, there's a whole term, the absence makes the heart grow fonder, you know? And I think that's why I'm such a huge fan, because I had a lot of Godzilla absence in my life. I know I sound like a drug addict. But, and we're going to actually we're going to have a video on the 30 for 30 series talking about that as well. The absence, kind of talking about how that was, you know, for some of you guys that didn't get to experience that, because now we have Amazon and we have different places we can go. Godzilla's actually very popular again. Probably, I don't want to say at an all-time high, but definitely probably the most popular he's been since before 98. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, so it's, you know, the old can't always save the new. And I think while that's the case for the Millennium series, I think the opposite effect is going to happen in Godzilla King of the Monsters, where the old are going to come in. They don't necessarily need to save the new, which is a good thing, no pressure. But they're going to make an impact on the new iteration of Godzilla in such a way to only continue to elevate his popularity, and that's a good thing. So, but anyway, guys, what do you think? What was it about the Millennium series you think was so bad that people just weren't drawn to it? Do you think it was all the movies? Do you think Godzilla was on a decline? You know, that's a complete possibility. No matter how much of a hardcore fan you are, things eventually hit a decline. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on that, and I look forward to reading them. Until next video in the 30 for 30 series, this is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.
Thank you for watching E.T.N. Click here to watch more content. Don't forget to leave a comment. Also, make sure you like and share this video. If you want to know when the next video is up, click the notification bell next to the subscribe button. And most of all, make sure to click that subscribe button for regular content.